And we are live with Kim and Hannah. Welcome everyone to this Think Young webinar. We are very glad today to welcome you to the Think Young Coding for the Environment, Female Role Models in Tech, Thriving for a Greener Future, in partnership with Boeing. As you might know, the partnership between Think Young and Boeing dates back already 6 years, so we're very happy to continue this partnership. And environmental sustainability is one of the greatest challenges of our time. And one key solution that can reverse its effects is technology. So we would like to see which are the implication of how technology can help the environment. And I think we do have the right people on the webinar today to talk about this. Irreversible climate change is already upon us, and there isn't time to sit, definitely, or wait for years. We have to act now and to lead the way forward. That's why we need to enlarge the pool of skills, the talents, the resources in technology that are needed. And with women making up only 22% of STEM workforce, we definitely have to look into that pool of talent and act. Diversity is critical today. Today, on top of being the day of this wonderful webinar, it's also International Girls' Day in ICT, and it's also Earth Day. So there are these two important celebrations that take place on the 22nd of April. And that's why today we're having this vital online conversation. We're honored to have with us, and you've seen them already, two special female role models for kids. They're joining us today, Kim Stollar, Managing Director of EU&NATO Government Affairs at Boeing, and with Hannah Brocke, which is a co-founder and Chief Operating Officer at PlanBlue. To everyone watching, please send in your question on the platform you're looking at. You might be on YouTube or Facebook or our LinkedIn. You just type in a question in whatever platform you are, and there will be space for question and answer later on. I now pass the word to Hannah to introduce herself. There is a wonderful picture that can or should come up on the screen, and that's coming. Thanks to the team, and the Think Young team was in the background and helping us with this. Anna, please, floor is yours.
Yeah, hi. I'm Hannah, co-founder and COO of PlantPLU, and we develop underwater satellites to map the seafloor in high detail. Thereby, we combine satellite technology with underwater navigation, advanced imaging, and artificial intelligence. And here on the photo, you can see our dive-operated prototype, but the future will be robotics. And with this data, we want to build a global seafloor database. And with that, we want to enable the sustainable use of ocean resources. We want to enable decision-making, accelerate sustainable industries, support conservation efforts, whilst tackling global threats such as climate change and plastic pollution.
Thank you, Anna, for the introduction. And I can't wait to hear more about what you guys are doing. And Kim, please, the floor is yours. I'm sure the Young crowd knows you already, but today we're trying to tap into a larger crowd with, again, International Girls in ICT Day and Earth Day. So please, if you can introduce yourself.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me and Andrea. Hopefully you all can hear me okay. We're the Boeing company is kind of at the other end of the spectrum. We are the world's largest aerospace company and a manufacturer of, I think most people know us for a manufacturer of commercial aircraft, passenger planes and cargo planes. But we also have a defense, space, and security system business. So we produce fighter jets and rotorcraft and satellites and security systems. And we're also a service provider for aftermarket support, meaning that when we sell a product to our customers, we help them maintain and operate those products as efficiently as possible after sale. So our customers are typically airlines and governments. We have customers in more than 150 companies. As a US company, we're headquartered in Chicago and have more than 140,000 people in the US, but we also have employees in more than 65 countries, including over 5,000 employees here in Europe. And that's really a testimony to the great European engineering excellence and skilled workforce here. We've been around for over 100 years, and we hope to be around for at least 100 more and hopefully beyond that. And have a long and deep tradition of aerospace leadership and innovation, and really excited to be here with Hannah and her exciting company. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much, Kim. And as always, it's great to have you and your energy and your enthusiasm. I start with one, I would say, of the most critical and controversial question, and we go straight to the point. Many argue that green technology which is extremely important, but it's just attempting to solve problems that have been created by the progress, and I mean, in somehow technology that was evolving itself in the first place, and that with every problem that technology might solve, more issue might arise. And I want to pose the first question to both of you. Starting from Hannah, can technology save our planet, and do the positive really outweigh the cost?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we people of this planet need to acknowledge that we face massive destruction on our planet, and that we have to act on it, and that we really need to be ready to make a change in society, in economic structures, and really open our mind for completely new solutions, innovations, and technologies. And then based on this, we can ask ourselves, is green tech really helping save our planet? And that one is very easy for me to say, yes, absolutely. That's what I believe in. That's why we founded our company, PlantBlue. We want to visualize the status of the seafloor because it mirrors the health of the ocean. When we don't have this data, we have no chance to manage resources or set up guidelines or implement laws. And there is really many great solutions out there. We are in a network, it's a European one called Climate Kick. And they have amazing companies which have great solutions for big problems like producing building materials from atmospheric CO2 or preventing the use of greenhouse gases on very large scale. So I think there's really a lot possible if we give it a chance.
Thanks, and definitely I share your positivity. Kim, how do you see technology? I mean, Boeing definitely, for whatever you guys do, I think technology is probably 90% of your daily job. Is how do you see technology when it comes to saving the planet?
Yeah, well, we're at our hearts an engineering company, and technology has got to play a critical role in making the planet more sustainable, especially in aviation. Aviation is a very difficult industry to decarbonize, and we've been working at it as an industry for several years, making commitments on emissions reductions and technology improvements. And it's absolutely critical that we continue to innovate so that we can bring more environmentally progressive aircraft to our customers and passengers. I mean, we need to make significant investments to do that. I can say since 2003, we've invested about $80 billion in new technologies, research and materials to improve the efficiency. We have what we call our eco demonstrator, which is essentially a flying research lab where we test out new technologies. And we've tested out more than 160 technologies on 6 test airplanes. Recently, we were able to fly our first commercial test flight on 100% sustainable fuels, which is going to be critical to contributing to decarbonizing aviation. So in addition to that, investments in technology that reduce airline emissions or airplane emissions. Each generation of aircraft is 15 to 25% more efficient than the previous generation, which reduces emissions. Same with noise. We've had reduction achievements of up to 50% with new generation of aircraft. But we know that we have to do more and that society expects more for us. despite the current pandemic, people want to travel, they want to see their friends and family, and they want to do that sustainably. So we have to make air travel more sustainable and affordable so that we can connect people, businesses, and cultures around the world. And we simply can't do that without innovative technology.
Thank you, Kim. And I think you're totally right. When somehow you're looking at the industry, so somehow you look at your competitors, but in this case, they're also, your collaborators. They're not just your competitors. They're all together for fighting for a bigger cause. And that leads me to the next question that I kind of want to take over to Anna. And I mean, we have seen in Europe, I think, in the last 20 years, a good evolution or a positive evolution towards startups. And I mean, something that we didn't have before. We definitely lag behind the US and China. I think we're catching up, and things definitely now we realize the importance of startup, but competition helps inspire innovation, and surely the environment sometimes lack to suffer from the lack of collaboration, what Kim was saying, and sometimes startups lack from a collaboration maybe with big companies or with other actors in this field. And to mitigate the effect of the changing climate, how can we encourage let's say a sustainable innovation? How can we encourage that different startups get together? Maybe somehow they're supported by big companies. How do you see this?
So first, I think, as I mentioned before, it's vital that we have the mindset of that we want to change something in society, on society and economical level, to really act towards the United Nations sustainability goals as well as the Green Deal. But I believe, environmental innovation suffers on 2 points. And the first point is that it's important that innovation gets a chance to develop in the market. And often there are old industry structures, such as the car industry, that prevents rise of new solutions. Or on a governmental level, we try to solve rising issues in a way we have always solved it, instead of rethinking it completely or try out new approaches. For example, when we have an increase in car traffic, we should not think in how to extend new roads, but instead maybe reduce car traffic. There are wonderful new solutions how to transport wares and people. And in the moment we overcome these old ways, startups get a chance to rise because there is a demand for the solution, and there will be enough money to survive from the customers, and that will also attract investors. And the second thing, what is important is that there's enough capital to push the solution to market readiness. A big topic is at the moment impact investors. It's very nice that there's more venture capitalists and investors who want to support startups which are finding solution. But there's still a great hesitations to new approaches. And in our case, for example, we should invest a lot of attractive investment because we can do so many good on so many different levels, become a global player, have also a large profit margin, which is of course important, but still it remains delicate to win investors. And to come back to the question about collaboration, I did not experience that so much, that I see startups being eager to collaborate together. And I think it's important that we do it, because to develop things parallel, nobody can afford it, and especially not a startup. So for us, it's quite opposite. If there are people having new great pieces of technology, we want to integrate it, we want to have it, and use the momentum to dive along in the wave. So I have not experienced that way.
Thanks, Anna. That's totally interesting to say. And you mentioned governments, and I think that's definitely an important part. And I mean, Kim, in your role, you deal with governments, that's definitely part of your job description, I would say. And if we do a step back and we look at government, or at least we look at the world in the last 5 years, there has been an increasing isolation of countries. I mean, that's something we cannot deny. You know, there was a time when, you know, globalization was accelerating a lot and countries, you know, were getting together for certain reason. And then the last 5 years, somehow the opposite direction. And government are so important as they are companies, as they are startups, that they manage to work together. And how are we going to encourage innovation and collaboration across border despite this, let's say, current trend of country isolation?
Yeah, well, you know, you're absolutely right, Andre. If we want to advance sustainable and environmentally progressive technologies, we have to build more global partnerships and tackle environmental issues in a collaborative way. No one country has the market cornered on good and innovative ideas. And as we know, climate change does not stop at any border. So this is a critical reality for all of us. So we need to build an ecosystem that allows for more public-private partnerships and participation among countries. You know, we need industry, policymakers, and citizens to all play an important role if we want to accelerate the pace of new technologies coming into the market. And in aviation, this is critical. A good example of that is the importance of cross-border collaboration in sustainable aviation fuels. You know, I had mentioned our Eco Demonstrator program, where we demonstrated a test flight on sustainable fuels. And we've announced that by 2030, we want all commercial airplanes to be certified to fly on 100% sustainable fuels. But if we're going to achieve that, then we need to significantly increase the number of global partnerships over the coming years. That includes with airlines, with fuel producers, with governments, and with research institutions. And you know, different regions are going to have different abilities and priorities when it comes to producing these types of fuels. So what may work in the UAE or in Africa or the United States may not work in Europe. So it's only through these multifaceted partnerships that we can truly increase the supply of sustainable fuels, reduce their costs, and deploy them in a sustainable way. So we've been thinking hard about how we can contribute that. We recently appointed a new vice president for global sustainability policy and partnerships that's going to be based here in Europe, and who's going to help our chief sustainability officer in the US. And really the entire idea behind that is to have more of a laser focus on helping to facilitate those public and private global partnerships.
Great, thanks a lot. And I mean, congratulations also on the, again, I think on the important public stand that you guys are taking. You know, I think it's important that companies more and more take public approach and opinion to this. And so we spoke about startups, we spoke about big companies, we spoke about governments. Now, a question for both of you. Let's talk a bit about, you know, young people, and the sense that I think has been clear with Fridays for Future a year and a half ago, when that young people were not just, you know, demonstrating for one day. They went out for an entire year, every Friday on the streets, whether it was raining or region in the world. So there was a strong, you know, commitment, a global movement from young people asking, okay, we need to stop now. We need to make sure we take the right path. And I will start with Hannah, but I'll probably ask the same question to Kim after. How can these three actors, corporation, governments, startup, can they commit to support this movement, that they can commit to support youth taking action to protect the future of our planet? Is there something that you would say, you know, that we as a startup, we could do this, and we as a startup group, we could do that? And how do you see that, Hannah?
Yeah, first of all, I must say I'm very happy about the recent development and the fighting stance. And I think it's past time that we acknowledged that we face global threats, because it's simply not acceptable that common goods such as the ocean, the air, drinking water, or land are exploited in absolutely no limits. So, of course, that has to be regulated. I find just the question, I think, a little bit strange. Why what the government or governmental institutions need to do for the young generation. I think it's more about like listening to them and act on what the young generations express. So I would rather focus on that than finding structures for this young generation. I think it's more in that they act on their everyday work rather than on the finding structure for this young generation, what they voice. For me, it's the other way around. And with regard to our company, we have a very strong ethic code, and we just stick to it. Our technology is very interesting for oil and gas, and we just say no. And that is also a responsibility you can take as a company and just set up the framework for it. And also, try to, like our technology, we visualize what's going on the seafloor. So you will have interactive, seafloor maps, and then you can also show this to the general public, and you can color code it maybe in red or green, and you can really say, let them see what's going on. And I think this is also something really important. It depends always on the technology, but you can do a lot of good and also present it to the public. And I think that is also something a company can decide on, to do such thing like today, for instance.
Totally, and I mean, and as you see, you know, that's important. We talk about it, and Kim, from your point of view, I mean, we do know, and because we collaborate together on this, you know, the different initiative you guys do with young people. But how do you see Boeing as an extremely large company? What can be the impact you guys can have in supporting young people when it comes to the things that they're trying to achieve with the different initiatives that are out there?
Yeah. Well, you know, Andrea, we have to listen to them first and foremost, and we have to act. You know, we know that aviation has come under a lot of attention and scrutiny in the last years. And while we've been working on decarbonization for a long time, we know that today's youth and society want more from us as an industry. So we need to listen both within our organization and outside of it. You know, we know that young people are our future. And that we as a society will be leaving them with any global problems that we're able to solve when it comes to climate. So, you know, what we're trying to do within our company is to cultivate the most inclusive culture we can and create that trust. We've committed to creating a safe space for open and honest dialogue where early career people can speak up and be heard. And we need to engage. Getting kids involved in STEM is an important part of that, because if you get kids and then early career people involved in STEM, they can be part of the solution and not feel like they're on the outside looking in. So that's why it's so important that, you know, your topic here today is so important to us. In terms of getting young people excited about STEM and helping us craft the solutions for the future. So we can lead by example, so that, you know, future generations will trust our intentions and we continue to earn our license to operate today.
Thank you, Kim. And you're definitely getting to the point of my next question, because you mentioned young people, but I mean, today is International Girls in ICT Day, and I mean, it's clear from the data that, you know, that the women don't make up as much as the workforce as men in ICT, and clearly the lack of women, the lack of diversity in general, it's a burden on the fact that you can generate new ideas, you can generate a new solution. I mean, there are plenty of studies about it out. If you want to find new solution, you need diversity, you know, in the team working on them. And I pose the same question to both of you, because I think both of you are, and that's why we chose you. I mean, you're a role model, you're successful in exactly a field where usually women don't make up such a percentage of a workforce. Why do you think women make up such a low percentage? And I mean, how the workforce and how does this lack of diversity affect the industries? Probably two questions, but first one is why do you think this is the case? And the second one, what do you think it can be the impact of this? And then maybe we see some solution later on how we can solve this. Anna, if you want to start,
Yes, I start with the second. So I always think that diversity drives innovation because you have different perspectives helping to find new ways. So they are very convinced of that. And this not only include women, but also, of course, other cultures and nationalities. But yeah, coming back to your question about why there are so few women, I believe that there's something really deep down in society that prevents women from having courage to follow their dreams, to take risks, to not be afraid of failures, and to have family, but also follow their interests besides the family. And of course, there's also the case that some male-dominated environments make it difficult to work for women. But I also observed something within. For instance, I'm building the teams here in our company, and I had women applying for a job in our company saying they maybe cannot do the job, even though they were very highly qualified. I know a woman who resigned the job because she thought she has not the right skill set, but that wasn't the case. The co-workers said that to her. I had two women who in the last moment didn't sign a contract because to work in a startup meant for them taking too much risk. And I personally get strange looks from women and men because I have children and I have a career. So, yeah.
Thank you, Anna. You definitely touch on few important points. I mean, the aversion to risk. You mentioned failure, which I think it's even a larger problem in Europe, definitely in certain more conservative countries. I'm Italian, you're German. I guess we come from two that are extremely averse to failure in general. And Kim, from your perspective, I mean, you had possibility to see different parts of the world, not just different parts of the industry in a big multinational, and you had a very successful career. Why do you think that there is such a low percentage, and how does this then obviously have an impact on the outcome of what we're trying to achieve?
Yeah, it's an important question, and I think there are several reasons there are so few women in the technology industry. One of those reasons I think is there's just a lack of a pool of women, and we need to feed that pipeline from a young age. There are studies out there that show in things like computer science, women make up just 18% of bachelor's degrees, 30% of master's degrees, and 20% of doctorate degrees. And those statistics are going down. In engineering, it's even worse numbers than that, 20% of bachelor's degrees, 25% of master's degrees, and 23% of doctorate degrees. Engineering, it has the smallest amount of women of the STEM education fields, and it's not seeing the growth that we would like to see. So why is that? I think part of it is a lack of role models. I think young people gravitate to fields where they see people who look like themselves. And there just aren't enough women role models in STEM education or in STEM fields. So, I think that emphasizes the importance of mentoring programs. I think that it's been traditionally dominated by men, STEM fields. And so sometimes I think in some cultures, as Hannah hit on, this can create stereotypes or perceptions about who or should or could become a scientist or an engineer. And I think there's some unconscious bias out there. I think girls and young women can be steered towards the softer sciences or the liberal arts through families or schools or even workplaces in society. So, we're going to have to address these systemic issues if we want to overcome this. And to your question on what the impact of that, I think purely if you look at it from a business perspective, lack of diversity hurts businesses. There are a lot of studies out there that make the business case for diversity, that diversity and inclusion increases productivity, it increases profitability, it increases quality, employee commitment, retention. And so the flip side of that is where you don't have diverse teams, you have less innovation, you have lower quality outputs, you don't have those diverse points of view that allow for innovation. There was a McKinsey study that found that in a group of publicly traded European companies, those that had gender diversity at the leadership experienced a higher rate of return on equity, operating profit, and stock price. So if you don't have diversity, then you're hurting yourself as a business, and you're potentially having employee retention issues and having a poor impact on your brand and reputation. So it's a problem that we really need to tackle both as a society, and I think it will help businesses economically to be more diverse.
Thanks, Kim. And I think you said it well. It's really, we have to work on the pipeline. We have to get them very young. And I mean, the collaboration with you guys, with the coding school, is what we're trying to do in several countries in Europe. And later on, we have a nice announcement to make. But if we stick on this, on the pipeline itself, you now are an entrepreneur, you had a good, successful career as a marine scientist. When you were young, when you were, 8, 10, 12, first, when did it happen? Like, when did you have this epiphany, say, that's the job I want to do, and I want to work in STEM? And STEM probably was not the terminology back then, but when did you decide that you wanted to work in science and then marine science? And then when did you decide, and why? I think it's the most important, more than the when. Why did you decide to work in that field and then to become an entrepreneur also? That's also another point, that definitely role models are needed. Women role models are needed, and we need to work on the pipeline there as well. How's your story?
It's not a straight one. Huh? So just when you look back. I think my main drivers were always my passions for the ocean, for diving, for traveling, for living abroad. And I was always interested in knowing how things work. And that was also nature, society, and technology. So my dream was then to become a marine scientist and be a professional diver and traveling for research. And in the end, and I'm still surprised about it, it worked out. And I did most of my research in the Caribbean. But then I had a big turning point during my PhD and also postdoc time. My research was focused on the degradation of coral reefs around the world. So I saw so much destruction under the water by human impacts, as well that I saw people on land suffering in those poor countries. And I really wanted to do something about it, and not thinking about like an NGO, but thinking something, a commercial solution to protect the ocean, something what carries themselves and has a big turnover. And since 2013, I was constantly thinking about it. I couldn't let it go. And then in the end, I had to decide on one company, which I believe will have a very large impact. So I left my rather successful career as a scientist and switched to business and founded PlantBlue together with my other 3 co-founders.
Super nice. And Kim, as you said, I think this one I probably asked to both of you. Anna before was saying I had many experiences, many cases in my company, of women saying, I'm not up for this challenge, or maybe I cannot take this job, or I cannot do it as I'm expected to do. While on the other side, there was a team probably telling her, no, it's the opposite case, no. And and clearly personal experience are extremely important, and also because you're seen as a role model, and I would like to pose the next question. I mean, first to Kim, then to Hannah, to say, but what barriers have you faced? You know, once we work on the pipeline, once we manage to get, as Hannah, young girls passionate about something that then gets them into STEM. So they are in the pipeline already. They are, as Hannah did, marine scientists. Are there any challenges? I mean, definitely there are. Which are the challenges that you think are there from an academic point of view, from a professional point of view in STEM, and obviously how we can go against these challenges? I think we lost Kim. I don't know, Hannah, if you don't see her as well as I don't. Maybe I get to you first for it's the same question. So.
No worries.
In the meantime, we wait for Kim is coming back.
Oh, there she's back.
There she is.
I give the floor to Kim then.
Okay. I don't know how much of a question you heard, but basically, let's say once girls are in the pipeline, as Hannah, said, they are inspired, and there are plenty of challenges there. What advice would you give them to, let's say, conquer the challenges they find once they are inside the pipeline?
Yeah, well, in reflecting on that question while I was trying to reconnect, I was struck by the fact that we're still having this conversation. When I was early in my career, I remember interviewing for a job and the hiring manager making a point to tell me that he wasn't interviewing me because I was a diversity candidate. And at the time, it never occurred to me to think along those lines. I thought he was just interviewing me because I had good qualifications. So, now that I've been in my career for almost 25 years, it's amazing to me that we're still having this conversation, and I think as women and as female leaders, we've all encountered those times where, we felt like we were being inhibited because of our gender, or people just don't hear or understand us in the same way. And sometimes it feels diminishing. So, if I were to give advice to young people, young women in particular, it's really to dream big and don't let anybody soften your voice. There's one of my favorite quotes is by a woman named Eleanor Roosevelt, who back in the 30s and 40s was the First Lady of the United States. And she said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." And so don't allow anyone to make your dreams smaller or to stifle your voice, because you have the power to put yourself forward in the world, and not allow that to happen, and not be made to feel inferior because of whatever background you come from.
Thank you, Kim. Definitely important that we make these words as loud as possible. And Hannah, what would be your advice? What would be your advice to? I mean, also probably what you told.
You saw me nodding all the time, so Kim really spoke from my heart. Actually, I have to share with you that it's actually funny for me to be invited here, because I was very bad at school. I was dyslexic, and I had two of my science teacher telling me not to go studying. And I had always this feeling of that I'm not good enough. But luckily, I was stubborn enough to still go my way. And then I started to study, and all of a sudden, I became successful. It was very funny thing for me. And then I dreamt about being a marine scientist and scientific diver. And then people told me, you don't do that because it's bad pay, it's very short contracts, and the competition is way too high. You will not gonna make it. And then the next thing what I heard is like, if you study that, okay, but then you have to study really fast. Otherwise, you don't get a PhD position. And then that really affected me. But in the end, I studied very long. I went abroad very long periods of time. Then I was leading scientific diving missions, and I was successful in my career and make it to renowned institutes because I did it my way. I had gathered a lot of experience other people didn't have. And so that made the real push to get me in a good position. So yeah, so from that background, I also can only say I encourage young girls to follow their dreams and be bold and not listening to other people, because it's sometimes not an encouraging environment, and then it's better to stand over it and still follow what you feel, where you have to go.
Thank you, Anna. And I'm sure there are plenty of young girls out there that are part of our community that are now listening to these important words. And as part of our community, there are also a lot of policymaker and decision maker. And I'm getting to, let's say, the last question I'd like to ask before the Q&A. So just a reminder for people who are watching us, if you want to ask any question, just type it in the platform you're watching us on. And this, again, more for Kim, because you work with governments. And what do you think governments can do to change the perception, when it comes to STEM, and what can they do to then help young girls getting the confidence or becoming, stubborn, as Hannah said, to overcome the challenges and so that they can not to just get them interested in the pipeline. We get them in the pipeline, they pass all the different, steps and challenges, but then at a certain point, you need governments to make sure that these things become a reality. And again, what do you think government and the EU maybe that can they do on this?
Well, you're absolutely right. We need to create that cradle to career pathway to strengthen and diversify the pipeline of skilled workers and diverse workers, girls, students of colors, communities typically underrepresented by STEM. So targeting measures and resources on early learning through secondary school, I think, is really important. And I would say, supporting programs like the ones that Think Young has out there. You all are an excellent example of the types of programs that both governments and companies need to support and incentivize. I mean, as you know, Andrea, we've been working together on the Coding Summer School for the last 6 years here in Brussels, and we've had more than 75% of girls joining our school. And it's really an encouraging story and something that the EU should support and be proud of. I think another avenue of opportunity in the EU is workforce preparation. We need to reduce the economic disparities affecting women and prepare underskilled adults and young adults and low-income workers for more living wage jobs in high demand sectors. We need to encourage mentorship. We need to have work experiences and apprenticeships and graduate programs that are catered to young women in attracting them to STEM education. And I think that there's a lot that governments can do to create those types of incentives and increase female representation in the emerging talent pipeline. But we have to start early. It can't be once somebody is getting to university. It has to be through comprehensive early education and early career programs.
Thank you, Kim. Let me see, and I'm on a different device, so that I don't know if you still see me or I disappear, but I'm looking for question. Well, we have plenty of. Let me see if I can get some question up from the team. Nimi Jayathurai, greetings from Texas. Wow, that's I think it's quite early in Texas to watch us, or quite late, depending on which part of the day we're looking at. But thank you, Nimi, for watching us. How do schools and families encourage a startup mentality among students and family? Well, talking about startups, I think probably, Hannah, this is for you. The entrepreneurial spirit, the startup spirit. How can we, encourage it in our kids, and among students, and make sure the families are probably okay with it, because sometimes there are some parents who are not so happy with their kids trying to risk years of their life at an early age to try the dream of becoming an entrepreneur. What would you say to Nimi?
Yeah, I mean, this can be just like my opinion. Like I have no educated background to that. So, but yeah, I think what is the most important is also to give the freedom to be creative. Because if you want to create new ideas, you have to look at things and just think about things differently. So I think in schools, it would be very nice if the children get their freedom to do something their way. I mean, it's clear that you need some kind of structures, but it's also important to break out of the structures. And I think the second thing is encouragement. That should be never too short, like these two teachers. Why can they say something like that? That is a big lack of responsibility. I think young people should be encouraged. That's great what you're doing, like having more feedback. I think especially in Germany, they lack a little bit on that, but it's definitely, that's very important as well. And that you can also do as when you have kids, just encourage them, be really like, playful and see what they do and they create.
Thank you, Anna. Kim, would you like to take a quick answer to the same question? In the meantime, the team is putting up the next one.
Yeah, sure. You know, I think this is where it's really careful to watch where unconscious bias comes in. You know, what are you encouraging your daughters to do? What tools are you putting in their hands that allow for that type of creativity? And I'll just give one vignette that I've observed myself. I don't have kids myself, but I'd like to think that I'm a really cool aunt. And you know, when I look at the toys that either my nieces or my friends' daughters are playing with, as compared to the boys, you know, the boy might have some game that is really a skill building game and it's complicated and creates dexterity and creativity. Whereas, you know, I had a niece that her game was riding a pony through the woods. So, you know, thinking about what tools you're putting in your kids' hands and whether that's stimulating that type of creativity and that startup mentality and being able to create something, build something, I think is just as important for girls as it is for boys. And we just need to be really careful with not letting that unconscious bias sneak in.
Absolutely. Great, Kim. I wanted to say many things about the toys, but I think then we end up on a long path. Sarah Wilkin, this is again from YouTube. How do you increase equity in the workplace? Do you have some suggestion? I would say probably, I think equity probably they mean equality in the sense of, you know, like, you know, how can things be on the same level? And talking about workplace, I guess, I think I lost count of how many employees Boeing has, but you guys have several 100,000. So probably, Kim, you want to start on this?
Yeah, well, you know, I think you have to be really intentional about it. You know, I think at Boeing, we have websites and training programs and all types of materials around diversity and inclusion. And, you know, we've been working, I think the aviation industry, by and large, historically hasn't been very good at diversity. So we've had to be very intentional on where, as an organization, we make our investments. So, you know, in 2020, we partnered with hundreds of organizations that are geared towards bringing young women into STEM. We have worked our way up the rankings from outside organizations like Diversity Inc., where we built ourselves up to top 50 of 1,800 companies for diversity in 2019. But we still have a lot of work to do. And I think an important part of this conversation is not just the diversity, but it's the inclusion part of it. So you can create diversity for gender and for race and for socioeconomic status. But if you don't have that inclusion aspect to it, then it's not going to be as successful. And what's the difference? The difference between diversity and inclusion is somebody in diversity and inclusion once explained it to me is diversity is inviting somebody to the dance, and then inclusion is actually inviting them to dance. So you can diversify your workplace, but if those people don't feel included and they don't feel like their voices are heard, then you're not going to have that feeling of equity, and you're going to probably have employee retention issues as a result.
Nice, and definitely we'll use that dancing metaphor again in the future. So I'll quote you, Kim. Can I ask thank you for the reply. Can I ask my team to put up the next one so that we still have 10 minutes because we started 2 minutes late, so we can try to involve as many participants as possible. Victor, all on YouTube today. There must be some about diversity. How do you suggest we encourage green growth in regions such as Africa? And thank you, Victor, because probably unconsciously by you giving me a very nice link for a future announcement we're going to make later, which are currently industrializing. How can we industrialize in an eco-friendly way, inclusive of women? Wow, this is super nice question. And I mean, I think when it comes to, well, you can both take this one, because I think, again, Kim, you have an extremely global position, so you can definitely know what to say about Africa. But Anna, I think, when it comes to starting from zero and growing, fast growth, that's probably what startups are expert at. So starting from Anna, what would you suggest to Victor? And I mean, or if you could give an advice to regions like Africa in the way they are currently industrializing.
I guess it's probably much more difficult because we also, the first seed of money was also governmental based. So we could apply for funding and somebody looked at it and say, oh, this is a good idea. And if those kind of funding is not there, it's going to be very tricky. And then also, the structure of the government is not so like with ours. There's a lot of corruption maybe going on, and that all makes it very, very difficult. And then what I experienced as well when I lived abroad, that you have outside investors coming in, and the people or the population or the people who actually lived there had absolutely no say. Like putting hotels up in areas where it was already a national park, but until they were traced back, it was sold already 3 times. So they couldn't, they never received a penalty. They just did a really big win. So I don't have really a good answer for that. And I think that is also maybe the responsibility of maybe, looking if there's investment groups who can help in that regard. I think that would be interesting. And I know there are some venture funds which also look in those areas and try to really support this kind of startups.
Thanks. Kim, what's your take on, let's say, fast green growth in regions, in challenging and growing region like Africa?
Yeah, well, and of course, every country wants to continue to develop and grow their economy. So one of the things that we've been looking at, just touching back to the discussion we had earlier about sustainable fuels, there are lots of different opportunities to create sustainable fuels, and making sure you're doing it in a sustainable way, meeting environmental criteria, is very important, because you don't want to be greenwashing or otherwise not having credibility as you're developing those fuels. And we found a lot of opportunity in Africa where, one example was looking at ways that we can grow tobacco-free, take tobacco crops and create a tobacco-free version of it. And in the process, develop sustainable agricultural practices. So the farmer isn't losing income, they're actually just kind of changing what their crop is, so they can do it in a sustainable way. They can still make money at it, and the economy can still grow. So that's one example, but finding those opportunities where you're not, it's not a takeaway, but it's a shift. and it's a repositioning and allowing for that growth. And I'm just speculating on this, but I have to, think about the African continent and the availabilities around solar and potentially wind, recreating what industrialization means and looks like and help it to support a decarbonized economy. I have to believe that there's a lot of opportunity there in Africa. And to the second part of the question, in being inclusive of women, a lot of things with microfinancing and ways to, as we talked about before, shift the skill sets, shift the things that we're training low economic women, people from low economic backgrounds and women in particular to do, and using microfinancing to do that, could be another area of opportunity, particularly within Africa.
Thanks a lot, Kim. Next one. I appreciate very much how you guys are straight to the point in a very short time. That's really nice because Charles, what best practices can be leveraged to ensure young girls and women do not fall through the cracks in male-dominated sectors? Okay, that's, I don't know who want to start first with this. I think it links back to the question of before that was talking about equity, which I have to apologize because someone of the team texted me, equity is different than equality, and it's about the resources you give rather than the resources than the opportunities you give. And so I apologize to Sarah, but coming to this one, what best practices can we leverage to ensure young girls and women do not fall through the cracks in male-dominated sector? And somehow, given the Charles and myself, we're both boys, what best practices or advice can be given to men also for ensuring this fairness? I don't know who wants to take this one first. And Kim, please.
I can offer a couple of thoughts, and I don't pretend to have all the answers by any stretches, but I think one of the areas we haven't covered is just our personal responsibility. If you look at the reason why culture has become male-dominated historically, there's a big network of men in high leadership levels, and they help the people that they're mentoring come along and help them develop those opportunities. I think women in particular have an obligation to look out for other young women and create that same type of leadership network and identify talent and help pull them through and up, and also have male advocates as well. I think we have a responsibility as female and male leaders to look out for that diverse talent, and I think that's how the system has worked up to this point, and so I think we have to leverage that where we are and how we can help others to make sure that people aren't falling through the cracks.
Thank you, Kim. Hannah?
Yeah, I must say I also did some personal coaching, which helped me a lot with that regard, because sometimes there's just like, the communication maybe is not so straightforward. And I had to learn that to maybe don't apologize all the time, or talking confident of my work, like saying that I did something good, like very, very like little things which helped me, that people saw me more, saw my presence more, and also listened to my ideas. So I think there's also a lot of potential by having courage and taking presence.
Thank you very much, Hannah. And we're getting close to the end. I see up on the live we still have a minute and a half we can take. If I can put you both on the spot quickly with one final question that we often ask at the end of the Think Young webinars. If there is one thing, just one thing that you would change about the tech sector to make it more inclusive and, let's say, more environmentally friendly, just one thing, is there anything that comes to your mind? What would that be? What would you change about the tech industry? I don't know
Should
who wants
I
to go
start?
first. Please.
I can start. Of course, I wish there will be more women, but I think I would like to say something else. So the tech sector only focus on quick return of money and software development, and I think what truly matters is how much money we can save in the long run to tackle threats such as climate change and pollution and destruction of resources.
Thank you, Anna. Appreciate. Kim?
Yeah, well, I'll sound like a broken record here, but I would just say, supporting more educational programs that encourage young women to go into technology and STEM fields.
Thanks. And thank you very much, both of you. Speaking of what Kim just said, we do have a little announcement to make. People who follow Think Young or Boeing and our partnership knows that we're very famous for this coding summer school that take place every summer in Brussels. We are very happy to announce two things. The first one is that the coding summer school will take place again in Brussels this summer. So that's great. So we're again with 70% participation of young girls for teenager, completely free of charge. So if you are, let's say, within reachable or region out of Brussels, you want to send your kids, please send us an email, codingsummerschool.com. But also, and that's a second and special announcement, and that's why I thank Victor before, the partnership is growing and it's going into an extremely important region of the world, which is Africa. We had a pilot version of a coding school, which is not summer anymore because we do it all the year now. So just coding school, Think Young Coding School in Kenya, Nairobi. And we're very happy to announce that we're gonna do that again by the end of this year. And we're working hard to make sure that we grow to other regions of Africa, naming Ethiopia and Rwanda. So we're extremely grateful to Boeing and all the team, because we started as a pilot. It was a bit of a crazy idea to teach coding to kids. And now, soon something in Rwanda and Ethiopia might happen. And I mean, we do many cool projects at Think Young, but I think this one is definitely on top of the list of everyone. And it's very dear to many hearts in the team. So again, thanks a lot to Kim and to all the people in our office to make this possible. If I can close with one last remark, today is both International Girls in ICT Day and Earth Day. And I mean, they are two extremely different but very important topics. Please, each one of us, make sure that it's not just today that we celebrate these two important causes, but every day we celebrate Earth and every day we celebrate girls in ICT. Thanks a lot, and see you probably next week, because now we have plenty of webinars on a weekly basis. And thank you again, Hannah. It was great to hear about you and to get to know you and your company. And Kim, as always, a pleasure to have you and host you.
It was very much a pleasure.
Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.